Hey Buckaroos, welcome back to Musicom Academy as we do step-by-step what to do when you're the new PD of a radio station and you're walking in the door. I wanted to play you this because I saw this on YouTube and at first I thought, wow, this guy's he's pretty radical. He's kind of a hard nose. But the more I watched it and got to the end, it sort of struck me that, you know what, this is a really good thing for anybody in management to see, okay? Because it's really, really important. I've walked into radio stations where the culture is, it's sort of horrible. Everybody's sort of backstabbing each other, and a lot of people would be lackadaisical and they just want to just kind of phone it in. Other people are trying really, really hard, and you got two things going at once. Some places it's just like a fun fest and nobody really wants to get any work done. There's a lot of different cultures that you can walk into, but your job really as a PD is to build a culture that helps you to win. And it's not really hard, but I just found this guy's video that I'm going to play for you. I'm going to play for you somebody else's YouTube video, and you really should take it to heart. First off, he's a good speaker, and he speaks really fast. And he's just from a radio point of view, there's not a lot of that kind of thing. He's just mowing through it, and it's easy to understand, and you get a feel for you know what, that's probably right. I should bear this in mind.
I've had a massive shift in how I view business, and it has fundamentally transformed everything that I'm doing. Hi, my name is Alex Ramosi. I own a portfolio of companies that does $85 million a year in revenue. I have absolutely nothing to sell you, and this is purely because I just want to help more people not be broke. So that's the goal. All right. So one of the things, I'm going to tell you two stories that significantly changed my career. So when I was just starting out in my gym launch business, I had a gym owner who said, hey, let's partner on this. Like, you keep filling these gyms up at full capacity. Why don't you just fill them and I'll come behind you and operate them? And I had a gym that was doing $4.2 million a year. This is what he was telling me. And I really know how to operate the business. You know all the acquisition stuff. So let's just partner up on this. And I said, sure, sounds fair enough. It ended up being a horrible partnership, but that's not the point of the video. The point is what I learned. We had two locations, and the newest location had a whole new staff, and they were just lackadaisical, right? They weren't caring. They weren't really doing a good job. And he said, we need to, have a meeting. And I was like, okay. And so he said, we'll have a meeting at the first location, call everyone there, tell them to show up at 4:00. At 4:00, so everyone's coming in, everyone's sitting down. It's kind of awkward. It's silent. There's clearly like some tension, right? And so at 4:00, he looks at his assistant and he says, hey, go down to the front, lock the door, right, of the gym. And she was like, okay. So she goes and locks the door. Mind you, some people hadn't shown up to the meeting yet, right? They were a couple minutes late, whatever. And so all of a sudden, as they lock the door, like 30 seconds later, someone's like banging on the door and it's like, hey, open the door. And he's like, ignore him. And they were like, why aren't you letting me in? Because obviously there's a meeting going on, right? And then another person comes, knocks on the door. Another person comes, knocks on the door. And now there's like 3 or 4 people, and they're like, what the hell? Like, why aren't you opening the door? Whatever, right? And so he tells his assistant, he says, go outside and tell them they're all fired. And he says this before he starts the meeting. And so I'm sitting there, right? And everyone in the room is like, oh shit, right? He just set the tone, all right? And he reset the bar. And I remember witnessing this and being like, wow. So what he did was he reset the bar of this is how we perform. When we say we're going to be somewhere, we're going to be somewhere at that time. If we say we're going to clean up after the session, we're going to clean up after the session. If we say we're going to follow up with leads, we follow up with leads. And what I have figured, and I'm going to tell you one more story, and then I'm going to tell you the moral of both of them. All right? So pause on that for a second. Now, when I had my first job, I was a blender tender at Smoothie King. He was a small business owner. I think he had 2 locations or 3 locations at the time. His name was Dave. Really nice guy. What's up, Dave? And I was trained personally by Dave. So Dave trained me, and I was, enterprising young man. I wanted to do a good job. And so I showed up at my first day at work at one of his newer locations. After, between people walking in, you were supposed to like mop the floor, clean the counters, like just clean it, just make it look good, restock the shelves. And so I started doing that when someone walked out the door. It's my first shift, right? And the manager was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I was worried I was in trouble. So I was like, am I not supposed to restock the shelves? Like, I thought I was supposed to do that right now because like there's no one here. And he was like, oh yeah, you don't need to worry about that. He's like, we don't do any of that stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. Boom. New cultural norm. All right. So what I was supposed to do and what the owner had trained me to do, and then was always complaining about how no one ever did what was supposed to do, the manager was telling me that I didn't need to do that stuff. What I learned from this, call the manager Vince. Vince is the name I'll use. So I said, do you in your business have a Vince? Are you the Vince in your business? Do you have someone in your business that's the Vince, that's secretly destroying your business? All right. So let's rewind to the original story about the first gym owner that I was talking about. So think about the difference between both of those styles of management. I'm not saying the first is right or the second is right, whatever. The second one is definitely wrong, right? But when you look at that, what it was setting the tone. And the reason that my views on business have dramatically shifted is that I have always had a tendency to lean towards strategy, acquisition, monetization, pricing structures, and all of that stuff is important. But I think within a business, there are two components to it. You've got the smarts and you've got the hearts, and you have to have both. And I think that most people overestimate the importance of smarts, myself included. And I think that there's a lot to do with the hearts, because business strategy overarchingly is not that complex. But like, you really think about it, right? It's like, you got to find something that's good, that people want, and you sell it for a lot more than it costs you to do it, and you do as much of that as you possibly can. Like, that's kind of the idea, right? And the thing is it gets lost in the execution. It gets lost in the doing. And so when I think about this from a cultural standpoint, and this is what has shifted for me, is that it's become so much more about the soft skills. It's so much more about coaching and developing the leaders of the company. It's so much more about addressing behavioral dynamics of someone that are limiting them, more so than it is about tinkering. And I can't help but think that so many entrepreneurs, myself included, I spent so much time tinkering and tweaking things. What if we change this in our sales process? What if we change this on this page? What if we change the offer like this? What if we change this on the price? What if we change the payment terms? Blah, 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 blah. All these different things, right? And your business hasn't changed at all, because the real problem is not the strategy. The problem is not the smarts, right? The problem is the heart. Right? The people are not doing what you want them to do because they don't understand why they need to do it and why it's important, right? And that's the soft stuff. And you've got, people who don't want to talk to each other because they don't like each other, because one guy's really annoying. It would better serve you to fix that problem than to try and come up with some new strategy. The rules are the same. Everyone was trying to do the exact same thing. And so when you think about the entire business landscape, right, your competitors have access more or less to the same talent pool that you do. They can see what your strategy is overall, and most people are not that dumb. Right? And so as long as you have a relatively sound strategy, like you're not selling things at a loss, right? Then the difference between the two is going to be your ability to execute and have people execute on your behalf. And one of my favorite sayings of all time is, advanced people never don't do the basics. Advanced people never don't do the basics. They're not the Vince, or don't have a manager like Vince, who's telling them that they shouldn't have to do that work, right? Who's sabotaging the business. What they did is they set the tone, and then they carry the bar. And so their job is to be intolerant of anything but excellence, because that, between two companies with the same strategy, will make the difference between somebody who yields disproportionate returns on advertising, crazy profits, good growth, great retention on employees, low turnover, from a company that doesn't have that.
There you go. There's a lot of truth in what he was saying. I've seen it many, many, many times. And, I think you should keep it in the back of your mind that, and I might be up against this, or I should probably think about this when I'm dealing with some people, that I want to have a good culture. That's what you, as a PD, for your department, and ideally for the rest of the station, if you can pull it off, or at least for a big chunk of it, you want to have a culture that is exceptional and really hits on all fours, or all eights, or all 12 cylinders, or whatever, and is phenomenal. Thinking about what this guy was saying in the video, I think this is a big part of getting there. Hope that helped. As always, subscribe, hit the like button, and the notifications so you get the new lessons when they come out. We will see you next week. See ya!